What, in this sort of the wake of the Great Recession and the need to scale back, what should a smaller Duke look like?
Sure. And how long do I have?
2 minutes. And pick from the time.
Great, that's a long time. A smaller Duke. In the next couple of years, the responsibility of the Board of Trustees is to ensure the financial solvency of the university. That means that we, in particular, have to cut $125 million from the annual operating budget in the next 2 years. But the Board of Trustees is also in charge of affirming and reaffirming the priorities of the university at a time like this. The priorities of a smaller Duke need to be, 1, financial aid. This is a time when students care more and more about financial aid. It means more and more to them, and it can't be something that's cut right now. 2, faculty hiring. Faculty hiring is the center of Duke. In the 1990s, faculty hiring in the humanities is what got Duke up to speed. It wasn't building in the sciences that came first. It was faculty hiring. So faculty hiring, financial aid, and the third is the undergraduate academic experience. This means small classes. This means excellent course offerings. It means individual opportunities with professors. These are the three of the key priorities of the university that the Board of Trustees needs to reaffirm. Areas that we can cut. We've cut about 1/2 of the $125 million deficit. And over the next few years, the way that we'll get to the rest of it is by only replacing about 3/4 of the staff positions that are opened up. So that means that there will be fewer administrative officers at the various sectors of Duke. That's one thing that we'll cut. Another thing that we have to cut, I think, is the kind of peripheral aspects of student affairs things. Fewer T-shirts on the quad. Cutting back on e-print allocations, things like that we can cut without touching the fundamental priorities of the university. That's what a smaller Duke will look like.
Thank you, John.
So a smaller Duke does have to get smaller. Duke is getting smaller. But if recent publications have anything to do with it, we might not actually have to go this full $125 million, which is actually a very good thing. That lets us keep some of our priorities. But nonetheless, we do have to get small. And Duke is a dynamic place. We go through periods of growth, periods of innovation, and then we get into periods of conservatism. So one might look back and say President Stanford's era was a period of rapid growth, and it was. We grew in a lot of different respects, and we grew in a lot of different areas. And then one might say that Nan Cohen had a period of conservatism. Well, that's not necessarily as true as it sounds. There was a lot of money there, and so we could really focus on keeping Duke strong at home and making Duke a very interesting and dynamic place. And during Nan Cohen's era was when we really emerged as the nation's leader in a number of respects, in academics especially. So if we are going to go through a period of decline, a period of less spending, I think what we need to do is shift to a period of conservatism and to focus on the projects that we currently have working and what's currently good about Duke. So we need to make sure that we keep our core strong and stop expanding at such a rapid pace. So international is important and expansion is important, but it has to be done in moderation, I guess. So I think there's a number of topics that we could talk about in that. I think the most important topic would be to keep our academic programs strong. John mentioned faculty hiring, that's key. But not only is it key to keep hiring faculty at a decent pace, but also to keep funding them. I know that a lot of our tenure track women faculty are funded well below men. That is an issue, and that's something that needs to be dealt with. As we're trying to hold on to our best faculty, we need to continue funding their salaries, and there have been so many cuts throughout the university that there are a number of problems there. Second, financial aid. I won't talk much about that. That's pretty obvious. And obviously we can't expand right now, but we do eventually need to expand it to international students. Third, I think we need to kind of focus on interdisciplinarity. That's something that we've talked a lot about in our strategic plan, yet we've grown at such a rapid pace. We've increased, done in 2 seconds.
Yeah, keep going.
We've increased the number of master's programs at a more rapid pace than we have ever before. 4 master's programs in the last year. We've expanded, we've created a new school. And this rapid growth is not necessarily a great thing in that it spreads our priorities rather thinly. So in the next 3 years, the MMS program is going to come back out for reaffirmation, I guess. That's something that needs to be thoroughly thought through. And if we're not going to be able to expand and spend as much money, we need to thoroughly think through the things that we are spending money on, such as our master's programs, which the university priorities could be said might be monetarily based.
Well, I think Zach and John are right, with the exception of master's programs because they are revenue generating. So I actually think you'll see the pop up of 5 to 10 more master's programs in the next 3 years. But aside from that point, I want to look at the social aspects of Duke. Because while I think academics are very important, I think it's important to see what the Board of Trustees is going to look at in terms of how social life at Duke works, because that is the most obvious area to cut, and there are some areas that shouldn't be cut, in my opinion. And I think that the solution is to work smarter and think about what we already have and how to utilize it better, rather than just saying, well, we're going to cut this and cut this and cut this. The first thing that I think we can think smarter about is the revision of campus space. In the last 5 years, we've heard a lot of planning and growth to solve campus problems. So I would say that whenever I went to administrators to talk about social issues, new campus, until just about the middle of last year, was the catch-all for every single problem on campus. We replaced things that didn't even need space with more space to try to solve the problems. But now we're not going to be able to build that type of space. So we need to rethink the building projects that we already have, the allocation of office space, for example, in the Bryan Center. But generally, the allocation on space on campus and how we can fix some of the social problems on campus, especially problems with the housing model, without just building new dorms. I think that the second issue we need to focus on is making sure that current investments pay off. And to this, I'm speaking specifically to the internationalization of Duke. I think we can see that with the massive internationalization going on, starting new buildings in China, having our new medical center open in Singapore in the last year, we need to start thinking about how we can integrate undergraduates and other graduate and professional schools into those experiences, rather than just having those sites that might not pay off as much as they could if we integrate those key groups. So I think that that's going to be important for an eventual revenue stream from those. I think that the third thing that we can do is rethink the cost recovery funding model. So for those of you who don't know, all of Duke's campus services are centered around a model where they all run like separate little businesses rather than being beholden to the central administration. The thought is that that makes them more efficient. But one of the problems is that the central administration makes most of the hiring decision, negotiates most of the funding structures before they come in. So for example, Duke buses are required to run at a far more than efficient level by the central administration, and then hurt at the time when they have to pay for the deficit, and that's why we have high parking tickets. So I think that rethinking some of those issues and how we fund services is incredibly important, and the board will have to address that.